Rabbi, welcome back to Yerushalmi Pesachim. We're holding at page 3 Halacha, which is page Nun Ches Amud Aleph. Okay? So, Nitma Kahal. So, if the whole community of those bringing Korban Pesach, or Rubai, or the majority of the community, were Tameh, or Shayikanim Tameh, everyone else is Tameh, Yasu B'Tumah, they do the Korban Pesach in a state of Tumah. Nitma Miot HaKahal, if only a minority of the community are Tameh, then there are individuals, their Korban does not push away the Tumah. So Tahirin Aisin is Harishan, the part-time people do Pesach the first time round. Tamein Aisin es Hasheni, and those who are Tameh will keep it a month later. Now it sounds like you're allowed to bring a Korban Pesach B'Tumah only if the majority of the community of Klal Yisrael are Tameh. And even like one tribe, majority of one tribe, or even 7 tribes, which is like a majority of 12, but if, let's say, there are small tribes and the number is not equal to the numbers majority, then the Torah people would keep the first Pesach and the Tameh ones would keep the second Pesach. So Man Tana, who is the Tana who holds that it's brought B'Tumah only if it's Rov, you've got the majority of all the Jewish people. We're not looking at majority of one tribe, we're not looking at majority of number of tribes, we're looking at majority in numbers of the Jewish people. So who is this Tana? It's Rameh. The Tanya Rameh, he Masechet Pesachim. The same thing applies if half the number of the tribes, that's 6 tribes, did a sin, following a mistake of the Sanhedrin. He Masechet Pesachim. The same thing applies if half the people from the people of each tribe of the 12 Shvatim sinned and followed the mistake of the Beis Din. In both situations, they don't bring a Pa'al Amdava, but Vad Rov, because you don't bring it unless you have a Rov, the majority of all the Jewish people. So Reb Meir looks at the numbers of the Jewish people. Rabbi Yehuda, he said, if it was not more than Chatzi Kol Sheva V'Shevet, if it was not more than far half, then they don't bring a Pa'al Amdava, V'Vad Rov. But in a situation where you don't even have one tribe, you're not going to bring a Pa'al unless you got a million of the sinners is equal to Rov Yisrael. Now basically half of the number of each tribe is half of all the people. But if it was Shlotim Shalemim, if whole tribe sinned, right, then not only that tribe brings a Pa'al Amdava, even though it's not majority of the Jewish people, but one tribe, according to Yehuda, causes all the other tribes to bring as well. Shevet Echad Gera Kol HaShvatim. One tribe will bring a korban for itself, even if one of the, none of them sinned. Basically, if one tribe brings it, then all the tribes are going to bring it, according to Yehuda. So now we'll look into the argument of Rameh and Yehuda. First of all, we're talking about the machlokes between them. If one tribe who sinned brings a Pa'al Amdava. So it says Pa'al Amdava, it says if all the Jewish people sin, V'nel Amdava me'enei hakahal, the Prophet says. So Rameh says, Kol HaShvatim Kurin Kahal. All the tribes together are called Kahal, not each tribe on its own. So you don't bring a korban unless you got the Rov from all the Jewish people. Rabbi Yehuda said, no. Even Kol Sheva V'Sheva Kahal, each tribe in its own right is called Kahal. So you bring a korban even if one tribe sinned. Now this machlokes was said as far as the din of doing Pesach B'Tumah, right, which is Hutra, the Tumas Kahal B'Tzibur. So according to Rameh, you'll bring a Pesach B'Tumah if majority of people have sinned. And according to Yehuda, even if one tribe is Tameh, all the people are going to bring B'Tumah. So Mishnah, which brings Pesach B'Tumah only in most of the community, that is Rameh. Now, okay. Now, you got Machlokes Tanaim as well, but bringing a Pa'al Amdava, okay, it comes from Hurrius, right? But most of you bring Rameh there, we bring Rabbi Yehuda. There's also Rav Shimon brought over there. He says you might bring 13 parim, 1 par for each tribe and 1 for the Beis Din. So we brought Rameh and Rabbi Yehuda. Now we're going to bring Rabbi Shimon. As to Rabbi Yehuda, the view of Rabbi Yehuda fits in a bit like Rav Shimon. So according to Rav Shimon Amar, he said, each tribe is called a Kahal. Kol Sheva Sheva Kari Kahal. Ken Rabbi Yehuda Amar, Kol Sheva Sheva Kari Kahal. He also says each tribe is called a Kahal. So they both argue on Rameh, who says no, all the Jewish people are called Kahal. So what's the difference between them? Nothing but then. They argue in the din of Greira. So if a tribe has not sinned, does it have to follow a tribe that has sinned? Do they also have to bring a par? So Rav Shimon says, one tribe doesn't cause the others to bring. Rabbi Yehuda, he said, one tribe causes all the others to bring. Now, one tribe can cause all the others to bring, but Maida, he agrees that when is it that you bring, all the rest of the Shvatim? Providing the mistake that came about from the Psak came from the Beis Din Hagadol in Lishkas Hagazis in the Beis Hamikdash. If it came from a little tribe based in their little provincial town, and the tribe followed them, then that Shevet has to bring a par, but it doesn't lead all the others. It's only if it came from the big based in Yerushalmi. The reason of this Tana, who says it has to come from the big based in, is based on the pasuk where it says you'll do the following. You'll follow the based in what they tell you. From the place that Hashem will choose. Right? That's the place that the based in Hagadol in the Beis Hamikdash. Okay. Now the Gemara brings a Machlokes Yehuda and Shimon. So we brought Machlokes and the Sanhedrin making a mistake, and if one tribe causes all the rest to bring or not. What's the source for the view of Rabbi Yehuda that one tribe causes the rest to obligate them to bring a par? It says, with common Tzibur, V'nislach l'chol adat b'nei Yisrael. Now, it doesn't say kol ha'eda, chatas. Not everyone sinned, but it says kol ha'eda, everyone needs forgiveness, right? So all the Eda need forgiveness in every situation, even if one of the tribes sinned. Now, what was the reason for Rav Shimon? One tribe doesn't cause the rest. He says, Ki lechal ha'am bishgaga. It sounds like when it says Kol hadas b'nei Yisrael, that's only when do they need forgiveness? When all the people sin, not when one tribe sin. Now, Ma'amakam Rav Shimon Tamar Rabbi Yehuda. What does Rav Shimon do with Rabbi Yehuda's pasuk? V'nislach l'chol hadas b'nei Yisrael. How is he going to explain that? Parat, he says, you know why? L'nashim niktanim, to exclude women and children. They're not included in hadas b'nei Yisrael. Ma'amakam Rabbi Yehuda Tamar Rav Shimon. How will he explain Rav Shimon's pasuk? Ki l'chal ha'am, all the people. Prat l'shetchilasa v'zadan, to exclude a case where an action was done, but initially by intention. V'soifa b'shgaga, in the end of the avera was a mistake, and they don't bring a carbon. Right? When they have to bring a carbon, if there was shogeg from beginning to end. But if they were mazid in the beginning, and then based in paskin that is permitted, and they follow the based in psak, they don't bring a pahel amdama in such a case. Okay, Rav Avon, B'Shem Rav Yomim HaLevi. Kraya Messiah Lemadama, the pasuk is a support for the one who holds Kol Shevet V'Shevet Kari Kahal. Every tribe in his own right is called a Kahal. Because after Yaakov Avinu, he had 10 children, Hashem said, Goya Kahal Goyim Yem Emeka, you're still going to have Goya Kahal Goyim. V'adayin, now who's still going to be born? Lo Nola Binyamin. Binyamin was still going to be born, so Kahal Goyim is a reference to Binyamin, so one tribe can be called a Kahal. So you got Yehuda and Rav Shimon arguing here with Pa'el Amdava. They also argue about a Korban Pesach being brought in a state of impurity. So Rav Shimon holds one tribe can be Chayiv Pa'el Amdava, but it doesn't bring all the others to follow up. And he holds one tribe can bring a Korban Pesach b'tumah if the majority of that tribe are Tameh. But it doesn't bring all the others to bring their Korban Pesach b'tumah. They have to bring it in a state of purity. So Rav Shimon holds one tribe can be called a kahal. So if the whole tribe are tameh, they don't wait for another month. No, they bring it now in the right time. But that tribe is not a majority of the Jewish people, so it doesn't lead on to everyone else. Everyone else still has to bring it in the state of purity, right? Rabbi Yehuda holds one tribe who has to pay a pahal amdava is a kahal. Everyone else has to follow. So similarly, if one tribe are tameh, not only they bring a Korban Pesach in a state of impurity, but everyone brings a Korban Pesach in a state of impurity. Just like that tribe. Okay? As if everyone is Tameh now. And he says here, as if the rest of the Kahal are all together. So even if one tribe is Tameh, it's as if all the Jewish people are half Torah, half Tameh, and Yehuda holds half of the community do the Pesach b'tumah, the other half don't do it b'tara, in a separate group. They all just bring the Korban Pesach on the state of tumah. The Tali, we learned to the price. If they were half Tara, half Tameh. That's a Tahir and Aisin is Harishon. The Tara people keep it first month, but Tameim, Esasheni, and the Tameh ones the next month. That is Rameir's view, to Rameir. Rav Shimon, Rav Shimon said, the Tara ones can bring it for themselves, but Tmei and Isin Asma, they do it B'Tumah, they do it B'Tara. They said back to Shimon, in Pesach, you can't have half-half, and either everyone does it in a state of Tara, if the majority are Tahar, everyone does the state of Tumah. Now, Manu, who is this Amrulai? This is they said to him, who is this Amrulai? It says, Kub Yehuda. It fits in like Yehuda, it's an Ilan Tama. We've learned Tim Menachas. Nitzmeis Achas Menachalas. Now remember, you have the 2 loaves on Shavuos. If one of the loaves is Tameh, well, let's say 6 of the Lechem upon him. Remember, there's 12 Lechem upon him, maybe 1 Seder of them, or 2, whatever. But Yehuda, he said, Shneim, both of the 2 loaves of Shavuos, yes, for the base of Sefer, they have to be burnt. She'ein Korban Sibul Chaluk. You can't divide the 2 loaves. You can't have 1 eaten and 1 kosher and 1 possible. You can't have all that. So everything's possible. The Chachamim say, Tameh b'tumah. He says the Tameh ones have to stay in their state of tumah and they have to be burnt. And the Tara one can be eaten. So Yehuda holds you can't have a common symbol half split in half. And that's like the previous brisa, the Amrulai. You can't have a common person split in half, right? So that opinion, that's like Rabbi Yehuda. He argues on the view of Rav Shimon, who holds you can have 2 groups doing things differently. Now the Machlekes view of Rav Shimon about common Pesach fits in with Payal Amdava. Rabbi Yehuda said with Payal Amdava, you can't break down the community with Pesach. If one do it with Tumah, everyone joins it. If one tribe has to bring Payal Amdava, all the tribes have to bring. And according to Rav Shimon, we can divide it up. One part doing B'Tumah, one doing B'Tara. Each tribe, you have to bring Payal Amdava, the other tribes don't. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yochanan, he said no. Mani Amrullah, who is the Amrullah who spoke to Rav Shimon? It's Chachamim, is another opinion. It's Chachamim, Shehein Keshitas Rabbi Yehuda. They're like Rabbi Yehuda in some respect. So they agree that you can't have a common symbol broken down. But they argue about a common Pesach. What do you do where half, you hear that, half is Tahar, half is Tameh. So Rabbi Yehuda holds, in this situation, the whole common symbol bring a common Pesach in a state of impurity. But the Chachamim of Amrullah, they hold, no. You can't have the tzibur bringing a common Pesach in a state of impurity. You hear that? It's half-half. So you can't say everyone brings an impurity. What do you do when it's half-half? What do you do? Do you treat the half like Karov, like a majority? Or do you treat it like a miut, like a minority? In Tema Kamiot, if you treat it like a minority, then Hatahirim, the ones who are Tahir, who are now like a miut, Enonaisin, Esarishon, they're not going to bring it first time round, they'll push it for the second month. Because Pesach Rishon is going to be a kahal, not individuals. And if half the tzibur are not like majority, then they're like individuals. So they can't bring it first time round. In Tema Kuraiv, if you're going to say they're treated as majority, then Atmein, the Tameh ones, Enonaisin, Esasheni, the Tameh ones can't bring the second one. They have to do the first one in a state of impurity. So how's it going to work? Rabbi Yosef said, we never said a minority who are Torah cannot bring the Rishon, the first one. And we never said Rov, Tamein, majority who are Tameh, Ein and Isin, can't bring the second one. All we said is like this. Rov, Tamein, majority who are Tameh, Lo yidachu lePesach sheni. Don't let them wait for next month. Tumah can be pushed away for a majority. You hear that? So majority who are Tameh, they don't have to wait. Okay? If the Rav is Tameh choose to wait and do it next month, they're allowed to do so. So even you're going to say like half-half, like each half is like a majority, well that half who is Tameh are allowed to wait. Right? And if the Mir Tatar, they can bring it first month, the first time. So Machsa, if you treat each half as a minority, the half that is Tahar are allowed to bring in the first time. And that's the understanding of Rameir, whether the half are considered like a majority or like a minority, whatever happens, the half who are Tahar are allowed to bring it in the first month, and the half who are Tameh can bring it next month. Now, Ardate Damrula, according to those Chachamim who spoke to Shimon, how do you treat half by half? What do you do? Now they must agree half of a kahal is called a majority. But not like Rishim, and they hold, you can't start dividing between Tahor people and Tameh people. So if the ones who are Tameh are like a majority, so they can't wait till next month, they have to bring it now. But if the half who are Tahor are like a majority, they can't join to the Tameh group to make the Pesach B'tumah. If the Tahor and the Tameh can't bring a Kam Pesach separately, so what do? For Rabbi Masechet Rav, B'tameh Nachab L'Sheretz says, you know what we do? We will intentionally defile one of the Tahor people with an insect. And that way you've got a Rov who are Tameh. Not dead people Tameh, but at least an insect Tameh, dead Sheretz. And then the minority can join to bring it in a state of Tumah. Shmuel said, Mashachinos, we send one of the Tahor people away. The Derech HaChaika. So he's far away, he can't bring his potter from bringing a Kom Pesach if he's out of the way. Ask your commander, that fits in like the one who says, Yachid Machriya ala Tumah, an individual who is Tameh can show weight on the impurity and make the numbers into majority. But Harav, however, commander Amar Ena Yachid Machriya ala Tumah, if you hold an individual can't, then Meshalchin Shnaim, we have to send two people away, and that makes you a majority now. So their numbers will be taken away from the calculation because they're not in the area. The Rav, now to understand Rav, that one of the Tahor people we get a Sheretz, and he makes the majority, it's like his view of Rabbi Lazar. Commander Rabbi Lazar, just like he says, Hey, Atzibah Magai Nevelos, people who touch Nevela, or Magai Shratzim, who touch Shratzim, Aisin, they can bring Kom Pesach B'tumah in a state of impurity. As if it was made from Tamei Mace, the same thing with Sheretz. Now, although Rabbi Lezer equates Tamei of a Sheretz or Nevela with dead body Tumah, so if the majority are allowed to do Kom Pesach B'tumah, but however, this is providing She'ein Shamayim Litzvah, there's no water to go in the mikveh and purify oneself when the sun sets, and therefore they can't eat their Kom Pesach at night. If there's water to go in the mikveh, they don't bring in a state of impurity. They have to send their Kom Pesach through Shliach and go in the mikveh, and then they can eat from it that night. You hear that? So if they can find a way to become Tahor, they're expected to do so. Now we mentioned two things where you bring Kom Pesach B'tumah, right? When the majority of the tzibur, or all of them, or majority are Tameh, or where the Kainim are Tameh, are Rabbi Lazar. Haba B'tumas Kli Shares. So if most of the tzibur are Tahor, and the Kainim are Tahor, but the vessels they're using are Tameh. And also Haba B'tumas Yadayim, the hands of the Kainim who are doing the Avodah are Tameh. Or Haba B'tumas Sakinin, the knives of the Shechita are Tameh. That's the state where the Kom Pesach is brought in a state of impurity. Right, although the Kalim are Tameh, they're only Matameh, the meat of the Karbonas, not the people who are bringing them. But these Karbonas are like Boim B'tumah. So the people of Tameh Tumas Aguf are allowed to eat from these Karbonas. They're considered coming in a state of impurity. Now, although if most of the Tzibur are Tameh Tumas Mace, you can bring a Kom Pesach B'tumah. Nevertheless, if the Rov, let's say, imagine the majority of people have got Tumah of Ziva, which is a different type of Tumah, then they can't bring Kom Pesach B'tumah. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about now. A Tumah, a different type of Tumah. We find Pesach is pushed away for Tumas Mace. We don't find other Ziva, other Tumah. So Hayat Tzibur, imagine you have a community divided in three groups. Shlish Zavin, a third of them are Zav. Shlish Tamein, and third are Tamei Tumas Mace. Shlish Tahirin, and a third are Tahor. Ramana V'Shem Chizkiah, Zavin Utmein, Rabin ala Tahirin. The Zavim are included with the Tamei ones. That makes it a majority against the Tahor minority. But Aisin B'tumah, and they keep the Tamei Mason become Pesach in a state of impurity. And the Tahor ones can join up. The Zavin ain't an Aisin, but the Zavin, they can't become Pesach. Not the Rishon, not the Rishon, not the Sheni, not the first one, not the second one. Now, Chizkiah takes on that even though the Zavim don't join with the Tzibur to bring Kom B'tumah, they join with the Tamei Mason to make a Rov of Tamei. So that's why we bring the Kom Pesach now. You understand? In the state of impurity, because they add up to the majority. Harav Zaira, Hazav, he says the Zav, how do we consider him? We treat him like he's always doesn't listen to the Beis Din. He never listens to the Beis Din. Kamada Tema Taman, and just like we say, Pa'alam Dava Meshubah B'Haraya, someone who just follows his own and doesn't listen to the Beis Din. And now, Eina Leimada V'Lo Morid. It doesn't add on to the numbers and doesn't take away from the numbers about Pa'alam Dava. So here is what we come Pesach, the Zav, Eina Leimada, he's not included with the Tamei ones to create a majority there. V'Lo Morid, he's not included with the Tahor ones to create a majority there. So he's saying, this opinion Rav Zohar is saying, ignore him. Someone who's a Zav is not in the Tamei crowd, is not in the Tahor crowd. You completely ignore him. Right? He argues on Chizkiah, who said the Zavim join up with the Tamei ones. B'nei Chabura, Shenitzma, Echad Mehen. A group eating Kom Pesach, and one was Tamei, and we don't know, Ben Yedua Ezehu, who is the one who's Tamei? Right? They stood, and someone said, I saw one of you got Tamei with a sheretz, but I don't know which one. Then all the group, Tzrichin Nases Pesach Sheni, they all have to bring Kom Pesach Sheni. Because at the time of the avodah of the first one, it's a suffix, Tamei. So they can't bring Pesach Rishon, they can't sprinkle the blood for them, they're all pushed to next month. The whole community, one is Tamei, we don't know who, Yasu, but Tumba, they can bring it in a state of impurity. Tani Raboshia learned a brayta. He says, Sibur is Tamei with one of you don't know who, Yasu Kisveikan. They should treat it like a suffix tumah. Laim is Sabra Delai. Now surely it makes more sense, Kadalatani like Raboshia learned, and only those who have a suffix tumah can do a Kom Pesach. Those who are definitely Tamei can't join up. And the reason is Shlelana Shliyachim Kares. The whole idea is that individual is definitely Tamei, shouldn't be punished with kares because he went and ate from Kom Pesach B'Tumah. So therefore he can't join in, you see. Those who are definitely Tamei are forbidden to join up. He's Tamei, he won't get kares because he's eaten from the Kom Pesach on the day of Tumah. Okay. So now, we spoke about where two matters which talk about the majority of the Jewish people. We spoke about Kom Pesach, we spoke about Pa'alam Dava, what's called a majority. Rav Imi Shem Rish Lakish, Laharaya. As far as the chiyuv of the community, they followed the Pesach of the Beis Din, and it was a mistake. We look at the majority of those dwelling within the land. We don't look at those living abroad. To get the numbers to work out is the majority, we look at who's living in the land. L'tumah, however, for doing a Kom Pesach in a state of impurity, we look at the majority coming into the Azara, right? For doing Kom Pesach B'tumah. We bring the Kom Pesach B'tumah, even though amongst the west of the country, there are many more Tahor people. We look at who's come in, and we see, are the majority Tamei or not? Now, what do you mean the majority of those coming in? Does it mean the first group? The first three groups? There were three groups. What are we counting? Maybe only the first group. You don't follow every different group. You only follow the first group. When they're still outside, before they divide into groups, they work out to look at the Merov. And if the Rov are Tamei, they're divided in three groups, and each group does it B'tumah. And if the Rov are Tahor, then the Tahorim are divided into three groups, and they bring the Kom Pesach on the state of Tahor. Rishub ben Levi said, as far as the chiv of the tzibur, he's saying this din, we're looking at the din of the tzibur for the community here, that they're following Pesach of the Beis Din, Hilchu, they're following the majority of the dwellers, Melavai Hamas, which is the northern border, and Nachal Mitzrayim until the southern border. The reason Rishub ben Levi from the pasuk, he made at this time Sachag, and all the Jewish people. He says the whole community from Lavai Hamas to Nachal Mitzrayim, and that's why did he have to say where they're from Hamas to Nachal Mitzrayim? So for here we learn those people within that border, then they're called Kahal. The people beyond that are not called Kahal. By Pa'alam Dava, the Torah mentions the word HaKahal. And the Pasuk in Malachim tells me it's those within the borders. So the din pa'ilam davar is when the most of the community are within the borders. And then, okay, halacha zayin. Right, what about an individual's carbon Pesach? Pesach shenizrak damai, an individual is brought b'tumah. Basically, the blood was sprinkled, and then we find out either the meat or the blood was tamei at the time of sprinkling. But we went and brought it under all ideas that everything was fine, and then we find out it was tamei. Atzitz meratzeh. The tzitz provides an appeasement. He doesn't have to bring it again. But if we find out after sprinkling, shenitma tumas haguf, that the person was tamei, ein atzitz meratzeh, the tzitz doesn't help. He has to bring it again. Because they said with the nazir, and I said Pesach, one brings God Pesach, atzitz meratzeh al tumas hadam. The tzitz is meratzeh if the carbon blood was tamei, ein atzitz meratzeh al tumas haguf, but not of the person of the owner. However, if he only finds out shenitzma, if he became tamei, let's say nazir or doing Kom Pesach, but tumas hatzahim, the tumah of the depths, that's like a rabbinical tumah. You didn't know there was a grave, buried underneath 5 meters under him, right? You didn't know that. That's a rabbinical tumah, which no one ever knew about. Then the tzitz is meratzeh. The tzitz provides an appeasement on this tumah, and the kavanas are kosher. Okay. Ma'asnisa. Now the Mishnah's talking about a case with shenitzma. Let's say the blood was tameh mishiyar l'tavira shekeli after it's gone into the airspace of the kli sharis for receiving the blood. And if this blood is sprinkled b'tumah, the tzitz is meratzeh. Aval im nitzma atru malon. If the blood was tameh while it's still above the airspace of the keli, right, when it's falling from the animal's neck, before in the airspace of the keli, then when the Cohen receives it in the keli, nasa k'mekabel mayim, as if he's received water, not blood. Even if he sprinkles it, it doesn't help. Minayin the safek kever time. Now, where do we learn that a kever, which no one ever knew about, doesn't passel a nazir or come pesach, right? This underground tumah. Rabbi Yaakov Barach Moshe Rabban, and it says someone who's tamei, he's on a far away, right? And lachem, ma lachem, just like that which is far away. Lachem means begoloi, that this is a derech, it's clear, it's visible. Afkal, so all the cases davish begoloi, something which is visible, as opposed to an underground burial. Yasa keva tahim sheina begoloi. No one knew about this. You didn't know about it. You're not sprinkling. You find out later. Adkadon, that's all very well. I said Pesach, I understand. But Nazir Minayim, Rabbi Yechon Hashem Rabbi, he said the Chiyam was made Olav. When the person dies on him, Mash Olav, it means on him he knows about it. Shubagoloi Afkal. So also everything Dava Shubagoloi, Yasa Kevat time as opposed to an underground burial, She'inam Bagoloi was not clearly visible. Yeah? So Nazir's Tamei Tuas Hatzahayim, he finished his Naziris, he brings his carbon. And then he finds out he's tamei from an underground burial. His carbon is accepted. He's finished his naziris. He doesn't have to keep it again. A community, I've got this rabbinical tumah. It doesn't provide a forgiveness for them. Of course it should. Because yachid for an individual, you've reduced his strength. We push him to Pesach Sheni with proper tumah. Your tamei dead body, go wait a month. Nevertheless, Yepisa Kaicha, we emboldened him. Is that a long word for you, Rabbi Say? We emboldened him and strengthened him, but Safek Kevat Ahayim. In the situation of underground tumah, we didn't push him to Pesach Sheni, we allowed him to keep Pesach Rishon. So Tzibur, a community, Sheyepisas Kaicha Shel Tumah Yedua, if there's known tumah, right, we allow them to bring in a state of tumah, all of them, the first month, and can eat it. How much more so we should strengthen them for safek kevat ahayim, if there's safek tumah of an underground tumah. We will allow them to eat their carbon Pesach. Right? An individual, tumah yedor will passel him. But tahayim does not. At tzibur, they are stronger. At tzibur who are tamei are not passel from bringing Pesach Rishon. They're mutter with eating Pesach brought b'tumah. So once you sprinkle the blood, you find out they're all tamei. To us at time, the tzitz will provide a forgiveness. They don't have to bring it again. But then the Gemara says, Kal Shata Mekel, that leniency you have, B'yachid, you're machsheh a carbon because of the heter tumas time. That's the reason, Shad Machmir B'tzibur. That's the reason why you should be strict in the case with Tzibur. We should passel and free the carbon if you find out the Tamei tumas time. So Gemara explains, Kal Shata Mekel B'yachid, the leniency you're lenient with tumas time of an individual is she'im, if he's got tumas time before sprinkling, fair enough. When it's vadalai he only finds out after sprinkling. Yasa, we treat it as if you find out now. As if you're tamei just now after sprinkling the blood, not before. We treat it, look, you only find out now, we treat it as if you become tamei now. And that way you don't get pushed for Pesach Sheni, you fulfill your duty with a Common Pesach. The first one. Right? And this din is Tusahim. We didn't know about this Tumah. So you're tired as far as Nazir, as far as Pesach, until you find out about the Tumah. As if you're Tameh when you find out. Right? So if someone went to Bavat Kevat to home before he brings his Common Pesach, after Zrika it comes out there was a grave there, then as far as carbon, we treat it as if he's Tameh now after sprinkling. So the carbon's kosher. Because the time when we brought it, he's considered tar, he can bring his carbon. But he can't eat it because now he's tamei. And since he's fulfilled his duty with Common Pesach, he doesn't have to bring it again next month. As machmir ala b'tzibur. So for this reason, we're machmir with the tzibur, because the dinner tuas ta'ayim, she'im, if a tzibur are tamei tuas ta'ayim, before the sprinkling of the blood. But nisvadalai, they only find out la'achas rika, after the sprinkling of the blood. Ye'aseh, commissionit la'achas rika. Is treated as if they're only tamei. If we only find out later, as if we were tamei later. You understand? As if they're tamei after sprinkling and not beforehand. In order that we're going to stop them from eating the meat of the korbanos. So basically, if the tzibur are tamei and they find out about it before they can bring the Common Pesach, then fair enough. We'll push away the tumah. They can bring the carbon and eat it in its impurity. If they were brought their carbon batara, you hear that, in a state of purity, but they're tamei after bringing it, but before eating it, they can't eat it. The heter tumah b'tzibur is only when you're bringing Common Pesach b'tumah and you're not pushing it to Pesach Sheni. If it's a time when the carbon is done b'tahara and it's kosher, then the tamei person can't eat it. So since as far as tumah satahim, they are treated as if they're tamei now. We only find out now. It's as if they're tamei now. So now it comes out they brought the Common Pesach in a state of tara, and therefore they are tamei later on, and therefore they're not allowed to eat it. You follow? That we only find out now is as if they became tamei now, but they brought it in a state of purity, so therefore they can't now eat it in a state of impurity. Kal sha'ata mekel. So now after the Gemara has brought the heter of tumas atahim, and it leaves the chumrah with tumah b'tzibur, it brings another source of the heter tumas atahim leading to chumrah. Kal she'at mekel, the kula you're lenient with tumas atahim but nazir tahar, with a nazir tahar, that is itself at machmir but nazir tameh is strict with a nazir who's tameh. Let's see. Kal she'at mekel but nazir tahar, that which you're lenient with a nazir tahar, she'im, if he's tameh tumas atahim before sprinkling, right, still a nazir. But you find out, nizvadalai, la'achas rika, you find out after sprinkling that when your Nazirus finishes, yaseh kamisha nitzvah la'achas rika, as if you only became tamei later on, after sprinkling. Shalai yavi carbon tumah. He doesn't need to bring a carbon tumah of a Nazir, because the heter tumah satayim causes we treat him as if the tumah came after you find out. So if he brought his carbon, he's finished the Nazirus. You find out later his tamei tumah satayim, before he's brought the carbon, then his Nazirus is finished. His carbon's kasha. At machmeh, and therefore we should be strict, but nazir tameh. The same din of nazir tameh. The same din of tumas tells me, she'im, that what? If he's tameh, and then he's tired from his tumah, and then he becomes tameh tumas before sprinkling the blood, but nisvadala, he only finds out that he's tameh la'achas rika after sprinkling. Yes, that we treat it, kamisha nitzma, as if he was tameh and brought his carbon, and then chazam nitzma became tameh again. In this situation, maybe carbon tumah, he has to bring for every tumah a separate carbon. Kahadada Tana, like that which we learned in Nazir, Nitma v'chazva Nitma, you became Tamei twice, maybe carbon Tumah or Kol Echad. Each Tumah needs its own carbon. So if he's Tamei, and he becomes Tamei again, before he brought his carbon, then one carbon will be enough. If he became Tamei after he's brought his carbon, he has to bring a separate carbon for each one. Right? In this situation, he became Tamei before he brought his carbon. And since the Tumah wasn't well known, the Tumah Time is like we're treating it as if he's only Tamei after he finds out. And that's after he brought the carbon. And that requires him, therefore, as Machmir, it obligates him to bring another carbon. On each Tumah, he'll need to bring a separate carbon. Okay. Oived Shal Pesach. One who brings a carbon Pesach, that's the Cohen. And he finds out after he's done it that he was Tamei Tumas Time. Mashi Yiratz Olav as the Sitz. Does the Sitz provide a kapara for the Cohen who's only find out now? So we can say Kavachomer. Ma'im Abalim Sharata Koichan Bezakin B'chayla. Now the owners, we take away their power. They can't eat Korban Pesach if they're old or sick. They can't eat Korban Pesach. Then we can't bring their Korban Pesach. And yet, Yipis or Koichan B'Safek Kevatim. We strengthen them with this underground tumah. Right? If we only find out after they brought their carbon, the Sitz is Maratzeh, we'll allow their carbon. So therefore, a Cohen who is Oved, a Cohen doing the Avodah, Shipisa Koichan, the Zaken of Achayla, we allow a Cohen who's old and sick to do Avodah. Therefore, Enadin, how much more so should Tiyape Koichan? We will strengthen his hand, the Safek Kevat Tohaim. If we find out the Cohen might have been on top of an underground grave, we should be lenient. And we'll say if he's Tamei with that, the Sitz will be Maratzeh. And then one says, no, lie. It's all very well we strengthen the owners. Anyone who's Tamei any tumah the whole year can bring karbonos. So basically, just through a shliach, as opposed to Toma ba'over, as opposed to Kohen doing the avodah. But where here his kayach, he's got tumas tahaim. We weaken his kayach. The Kohen is Tamei any tumah is possible from even bringing a carbon of an individual. Therefore, we're not going to accept him to do the avodah the rest of the year. Then we're going to stop him from being involved in the tumas time of Tamei Meis, and therefore the Sitz will not help in the situation of Korban Pesach. So although he's greater, more than the koach of Bala Carbon to bring these karbonos when he's old or sick, but the Bala Carbon is greater than the Cohen, but for us the tumas is itself. Because if the Bala Carbon is Tamei, he can send the carbon through a shliach. Right? The Kohen who's Tamei can't have any share in the avodah. So maybe also here, for us Tumas Tahaim, the koach of a Bala Carbon is greater than the Kohen. So the suffix Tumas Tahaim, is it permitted for a Kohen, is not so clear cut. Ma'ikadun. So what are we going to discuss? What's the halacha then? Is the Sitz Maratzeh for a Kohen doing the avodah when he's got Tamei Tumas Tahaim? Rav Nachman Hashem Ramana, it says a person who's away, far away, lachem, only as someone who's Tamei the Mace, we know he's pushed to Pesach Sheni, but not Tumas Time, which is not known. Right? Since it says lachem, we darshan, bein lai, whether it's for the Bala Carbon, this heter is for Bala bein lai, bein la Ovid Shalai, or one who does the avodah for him, which is the Kohen. If after the Gemara of the avodah we find out he was Tamei Tumas Time, the Sitz is Maratzeh on the Carbon. Okay, I think we will stop here. The sugya carries on, but it's a long sugya, so we'll carry on.